Good evening, everyone. Why did Donald Trump falsely accuse President Barack Obama of committing a felony by wiretapping Trump's telephone and have the audacity to demand a Congressional investigative committee investigate his false accusation? The answer to this mystery will now be given in this commentary.
On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Oh, well," she cried, "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you." "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work that night. As soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken and revived. "Take me in, O tender woman, take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried, "but if I hadn't brought you in by now, you might have died." Now she stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed him and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bitten me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin.
"You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in."
On March 20th, 2017, a new reality TV show featuring Donald Trump will be broadcast. Tune in Monday night to watch Liars in the White House. Episode 1 is entitled Spies, Lies, and Russian Ties. The first episode of Liars in the White House will be broadcast live from a United States Congressional Investigative Committee in Washington, D.C. The issue concerns a scandalous accusation made by Donald Trump accusing President Barack Obama of wiretapping Trump's telephone during the last presidential election campaign. Cantankerous Democrats in search of the truth will forcefully interrogate Obama's accusers and demand the production of evidence to substantiate the outrageous declaration that President Obama committed the most notorious felony of a sitting United States president. Republicans have remained silent and have yet to give a viable defense of Trump's sensational accusation. Republicans are profoundly confounded, baffled, and incapable of constructing a rational argument in support of Trump's outrageous accusation because Donald Trump has refused to declare or provide any facts or evidence to substantiate his accusation against Barack Obama. Even more perplexing is Trump's refusal to comply with the Congressional Investigative Committee demand that he provide any and all evidence to the investigative committee by March 13th that substantiates his assertion that Obama wiretapped his telephone. The deadline set by the investigative committee has passed, and Trump has failed to provide evidence commanded by the investigative committee. The plot thickens as the first live televised episode of Lies, Spies, and Russian Ties draws nearer. Trump now claims the British government also wiretapped his telephone. Legal analysts and political pundits are perplexed by Trump's bizarre accusations and are asking, why does Donald Trump want the United States Congress to conduct a congressional investigative hearing on his slanderous accusation that accuses President Obama of committing a felony crime by illegally wiretapping his telephone during the presidential election campaign? The bizarre and strange utterances of a 70-year-old eccentric billionaire at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, declaring Obama wiretapped his telephone in Trump Tower during the presidential election campaign, exemplifies the behavior of someone suffering from mental psychosis such as paranoid schizophrenia and hallucinogenic delusions. Trump's outrageous bedside declaration that Obama committed a felony shows Trump is either a pathological liar or suffers from a chronic mental illness. He is either under-medicated or under-investigated. When the president of the most powerful country in the world cannot distinguish between fact and fiction and is obsessed and preoccupied with delusions that have no factual basis, it is reasonable to assume such persons should not have access to nuclear codes that can start World War III. It is a very dangerous time for all men who live on Earth when the president of the world's most powerful country makes irrational, unfounded statements and is unable to distinguish between reality and delusional fantasies. Trump's outrageous and blatant false accusation that Obama illegally wiretapped his telephone during the presidential campaign is reckless, bizarre, and a rather outlandish presidential act, simply because there is absolutely no evidence or factual basis that supports or substantiates Trump's allegation that President Obama wiretapped his telephone in the Trump Tower during the presidential election campaign. In the real world, neither President Obama nor any American president can arbitrarily, without judicial review and judicial authorization, wiretap the telephone of an American citizen. Pursuant to the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, a United States president must obtain permission from a federal judge to wiretap the telephone of an American citizen. A warrant authorizing the president to wiretap an American citizen can only be granted after a president has presented evidence to a federal judge that shows probable cause exists that a crime has been committed. Probable cause can only be established by presenting creditable factual evidence to a federal judge or panel of federal judges. This is the only legal means by which Trump could have been wiretapped. No such proceedings ever occurred. As President of the United States, any attempt by Obama to obtain a warrant to wiretap Trump during the presidential election campaign would be available for Trump to review. A paper trail of these judicial inquisitions would be preserved as a matter of record. The record shows Obama never attempted to obtain a warrant to wiretap Trump. No evidence or factual basis exists to support or substantiate Trump's outrageous declaration that Obama wiretapped his telephone. No evidence or factual basis exists that shows Obama secretly wiretapped Trump without judicial authorization or with judicial approval within the framework of the Fourth Amendment. There exists no evidence or factual basis that the Obama administration made attempts to obtain a wiretap warrant of Trump during the presidential election campaign. The United States Justice Department, the FBI, and the CIA have all unequivocally stated neither a fiscal warrant nor a criminal warrant was applied for or issued against Trump by a federal judge during the presidential election campaign to wiretap Trump's telephone. No direct or indirect evidence exists that can explain, support, or substantiate Trump's delusional accusation that President Obama wiretapped his telephone during the presidential election campaign. Trump's treacherous false accusation against President Obama clearly shows the Donald is a king without clothes. An American president suffering from an acute case of paranoid schizophrenia, who fears a skinny black man from Kenya is looking through his bedroom window and listening in on all of his secret conversations. The dictionary defines paranoid schizophrenia as a subtype of schizophrenia in which the patient has delusions, that is, false beliefs, that a person or some individuals are plotting against them or members of their family. Donald Trump may be delusional, but he is also a cunning motivational speaker, a Pied Piper capable of bewitching the minds of foolish men and securing their allegiance. Despite Trump's inability to provide a scintilla of evidence that supports his outrageous accusation, he demands a Congressional Investigative Committee prove his slanderous declaration to be true. In essence, Trump believes he does not bear the burden of proof and is not obligated to substantiate his slanderous allegation that President Obama committed a felony. Trump asserts the defendant bears the burden to prove his innocence. Such contention turns our system of jurisprudence upside down. Such a contention, if adopted, would elevate Trump from a Democratic president to the status of a dictator, monarch, or pharaoh whose word cannot be challenged. Trump has demanded the Congressional Investigative Committee to prove the existence of something that does not exist. Trump wishes the Congressional Investigative Committee to prove a negative, to prove something that cannot be established with facts. Trump has invited the Congressional Investigative Committee to join him in his fantasy world of make-believe, a fictitious world controlled by lies, spies, and Russian ties. Certainly, Trump knows his accusation against Obama is false. He knows his false accusation is based neither upon facts nor evidence and cannot be proven by him or anyone else. On the surface, it appears Trump is truly a nutcase, but is he? In the opinion of his opponents and many of his followers, Trump seems to be mentally unstable and unpredictable. This opinion is based on the fact Trump knowingly made a false allegation against President Obama and demands the United States Congress to investigate his false allegation with the expectation and hope Congress will in fact conclude a delusional fantasy is a fact we all should believe. Trump expects the Congressional Investigative Committee to make up facts and evidence out of thin air to substantiate his delusional false statement, a fictitious claim Trump knows cannot be proven with evidentiary facts. Is the so-called man known as President Trump truly crazy? Is Trump out of his mind for knowingly making a false claim against President Obama and demanding the United States Congress to investigate his baseless claim that neither he nor any sane person can prove? Legal scholars and experienced politicians throughout the country have described Trump's behavior as unorthodox, slanderous, bizarre, reckless, unpresidential, and foolish. Many have said Trump is a pathological liar. Nevertheless, like a notorious man known as Adolf Hitler, Trump has proven to be a cunning fox who now sits in the Oval Office as the most powerful man in the world. Regardless of his nefarious characteristics and odious attributes, Donald Trump is the President of the United States of America. Get used to it. One day soon, another man spoken of in the book of Revelation as the man of sin and the son of perdition will also deceive the world and become the ruler of the world. Trump may be a bold and audacious pathological liar, but like the man of sin, he has gained the trust and allegiance of men. Despite his pandering to white supremacists and admitted sexual abuse of women, he has outwitted all of his Republican and Democratic opponents to become the President of the United States of America. But the question has yet to be answered. Why did this silver fox accuse President Obama of wiretapping his telephone and demand a congressional investigation of an allegation he knows to be false? Trump is playing a game of three-dimensional chess. Do not be deceived by his apparent insanity. Trump knows without a doubt Obama did not wiretap his telephone. Trump knows no FICA warrant or federal court issued a warrant to wiretap his telephone or the telephone of his campaign team. Trump knows this because, as President of the United States, he now has direct access to all warrant applications, warrant affidavits, and warrants that would have been issued against him or his campaign members. So what exactly is the game Trump is playing? What is his motive? Why would any sane president subject himself to a high-profile, publicly televised congressional investigation likely to implicate him or members of his campaign to criminal prosecution? There are other unspoken dimensions and underlying motives to Trump's demand for a congressional investigation. Trump's hidden agenda explains his bizarre and outrageous accusation against Obama and his demand for an investigation. Trump made his outrageous accusation against Obama to get the ball rolling. The big lie was the catalyst used by Trump to accomplish his real and unspoken objective. His real objective is to be cleared of any and all accusations of collusion with the Russians to compromise the presidential election. Trump understands the legal and political implications of a congressional investigation that will inevitably show a complete lack of evidence to substantiate probable cause that he or his campaign members committed acts of espionage or collusion with Russian spies. Trump understands a congressional investigative hearing that shows no evidence exists, a warrant was issued by the Obama administration, also shows no facts and evidence exists that would substantiate probable cause for issuance of a warrant for espionage or collusion with Russian spies. Let me repeat that. Trump understands a congressional investigative hearing that shows no evidence exists that a warrant was issued by the Obama administration, also shows no facts and evidence exists that substantiate probable cause for issuance of a warrant for espionage or collusion with Russian spies. This evidentiary finding proves no facts exist that Trump or his campaign members illegally colluded with the Russians to compromise the presidential election. This is the underlying agenda of Trump's accusation against Obama and his demand for a publicly televised congressional investigative hearing. When Trump says Obama wiretapped his telephone, he really is saying Obama has no evidence that Trump or the Trump team colluded with the Russians. What Trump is suggesting is that all ongoing Democratic investigations of collusion is a waste of taxpayers' money, and all such investigations of him and his campaign team should stop. Trump understands a congressional investigation of his outrageous, slanderous accusation against Obama will in effect exonerate him and members of his election campaign team who met with Russian officials and whose conversations were recorded. The congressional investigative hearing on March 20th to determine whether President Obama wiretapped Trump's telephone will only reveal that all recorded conversations, meetings, and contacts the Trump team had with Russian officials were legal. Consequently, the congressional investigative hearing will exonerate and lay to rest once and for all any and all accusations made by Trump opponents suggesting Trump or his campaign team were in collusion with Russian spies to compromise the presidential election campaign in favor of Trump. When a poker player knows what cards his opponent is holding, he can call his opponent's bluff and demand his opponent to put all of his cards on the poker table for everyone to see. This is why Trump now demands that a congressional investigative hearing be conducted in full view of the American public. Trump knows the investigative cards held by the government. Therefore, Trump now demands all government investigative evidence be revealed to the public. Trump is demanding that those who accuse him of colluding with Russian spies place their evidence on the poker table. Trump is calling their bluff. To his opponent's surprise, Trump will win. This is why. Trump's methods are legally questionable and morally reprehensible. Nevertheless, his tactic is a brilliant legal and political maneuver. Based upon the government's hand, that is, the entire composite of all federal investigative information collected during the presidential election campaign, A congressional investigative hearing to determine whether Obama wiretapped Trump's telephone during the presidential campaign will show no evidence exists of illegal activity by the Trump team. By default, this factual conclusion will resolve the collateral issue of whether Trump or any of his campaign team conspired with Russian officials to compromise the presidential election in favor of Trump. When the investigative committee shows the Obama administration did not wiretap Trump because the Obama administration did not have facts and evidence to substantiate probable cause of illegal activities by the Trump team, allegations of collusion will also be inadvertently disproved. Let me say that again. When the investigative committee on Monday night, March 20th, 2017, shows the Obama administration did not wiretap Trump because the Obama administration did not have facts and evidence to substantiate probable cause of illegal activities by the Trump team, allegations now being made by Democrats of collusion will also be inadvertently disproved. All speculation and conjecture concerning questionable meetings and contacts the Trump team had with Russian officials during the time period in question will be quashed. That is because legal contacts made by the Trump team are not evidence of criminal collusion or espionage that is needed to establish probable cause that a crime was committed. Nor are legal contacts evidence that the Trump team were involved in a conspiracy that would make them culpable as a party to a crime under the theory of criminal conspiracy. Legal activity does not establish a factual basis that can be used to substantiate probable cause that a crime may have been committed. No inference of a criminal conspiracy can be drawn from legal activities. The congressional investigation demanded by Trump will show no evidence exists that supports Trump's assertion President Obama wiretapped his telephone. The investigative committee will conclude Obama never sought a FICA warrant or criminal warrant against Trump or the Trump team. Therefore, a determination that President Obama did not wiretap Trump by default resolves the remaining issue relative to whether the Trump team engaged in criminal espionage and treason by colliding with Russian officials to compromise the presidential election campaign in favor of Trump. Neither direct nor circumstantial evidence exists that justified issuance of a FICA or criminal warrant against Trump or the Trump team. Insufficient evidence to obtain a FICA or criminal warrant against Trump and the Trump team when President Obama was in office also proves the non-existence of probable cause evidence needed to prove Trump or his campaign team colluded with Russian officials to interfere with the presidential election. If there was no evidence sufficient to authorize grant of a FICA or criminal warrant to the Obama administration, there also is no evidence sufficient to establish probable cause of espionage and illegal collusion of Trump and the Trump team with Russian officials. Collusion is predicated upon the existence of criminal activity or involvement with a criminal conspiracy. As the Congressional Investigative Committee will reveal, there is no evidence that Obama attempted to obtain a warrant against Trump because Obama did not have any evidence of any collusion by the Trump team with Russian officials. Trump will make the Congressional Investigative Committee prove his innocence of any assertion of collusion with Russian spies. A determination that no evidence exists to substantiate issuance of a FICA or criminal warrant to wiretap Trump or the Trump team collaterally stops any necessity to further investigate whether Trump or the Trump team colluded with Russian spies to influence the outcome of the presidential election. This is because probable cause evidence needed to authorize the grant of a FISA warrant or criminal warrant to wiretap Trump or his campaign members is the same evidence needed to show probable cause that Trump colluded with Russian spies. The evidence needed to show, prove, and authorize a FISA warrant or a criminal warrant to wiretap Trump or the Trump team is the same evidence needed to show and prove Trump and his team colluded with the Russians. Trump's poker hand looks good. Theoretically, from a legal point of view, Trump is in the clear. However, when a criminal investigation is being conducted, there always exists unknown risks to those being investigated. Like any suspect, Trump cannot play his hand without any risks. However, Trump's poker hand looks very, very good, and his opponent's hand looks extremely bad. Trump has read his opponent's cards and made a bold move to demand a congressional investigative hearing. His mysterious move is based on the presumption that his opponent's cards will not show evidence that he or any member of his campaign team committed criminal acts. It appears the cards are in Trump's favor, so Trump is demanding his opponents show their poker hand. That is, Trump is demanding the government to show their evidence of collusion. He is demanding that the government prove and show the world there is no evidence that he or his campaign members colluded with Russian spies to interfere with the outcome of the presidential election. Trump will accomplish this by forcing the government to show no scintilla of evidence exists to substantiate probable cause for issuance of a FISA or criminal warrant for wiretapping his telephone. This is the only reason Trump threw Obama under the bus and falsely accused Obama of wiretapping his telephone. Because of a lack of evidence, a congressional investigative hearing can only result in a finding favorable to Trump and his campaign members being exonerated of collusion. The congressional investigative hearing scheduled to be televised on Monday, March 20th, 2017, to determine whether President Obama wiretapped Trump's telephone will only reveal what has already been revealed and what is already known to the world. What will be revealed on March 20th, 2017 is no evidence exists that proves President Obama wiretapped Trump or Trump's campaign workers. Trump is more concerned about the legal consequences than the political outcome of this congressional investigation. The congressional investigation scheduled for March 20th, 2017 will show Trump to be a bold and non-repenting pathological liar, simply because no evidence will be produced to substantiate his outrageous false claim of wiretapping. Nevertheless, this televised congressional investigation will exonerate Trump and the Trump team from any assertions of collusion, espionage, or criminal wrongdoing. The congressional investigative hearing will show Donald Trump is in fact a calculating pathological liar, incapable of telling the truth. However, the Trump team will be free and clear of any federal crime his opponents have accused the Trump team of committing. This is the underlying motive that explains the bizarre and seemingly precarious request by Trump for a high-profile congressional investigation into his outrageous declaration against Obama. The web of lies spun by Trump is ingenious as it is immoral. However, these tactics are to be expected from someone who believes lying is a virtue. It is important to understand Russian officials, as a matter of course, are wiretapped for national security reasons, and such wiretaps are legal. When Trump campaign members met with Russian officials, their conversations were recorded only because the Russians were being wiretapped, not because Trump campaign members were being wiretapped. Attorney General Sessions got caught up not because he made illegal contacts with Russian spies, but because he lied to Congress. Sessions and Flagger got in trouble because their secret meetings with the Russians were exposed. Although their meetings were legal, the meetings were not an unknown secret to the United States government, who were legally recording the Russians by wiretap. The telephone lines of the Russians were wiretapped, not the telephone lines of Flagler or Sessions. Nothing Sessions or Flagler said in these meetings were construed or concluded to be illegal collusion with these Russian agents. Nothing Sessions or Flagler said or did at these meetings were interpreted as interference with the presidential election campaign. Nevertheless, neither Sessions nor Flagler knew their conversations were being recorded and a record of their contacts had been preserved. Both General Flagler and Attorney General Sessions got into trouble because Sessions, while under oath, lied to the United States Congress about meeting with the Russians. Neither Flagler nor Sessions got into trouble because they met with Russian spies or because of what they said at these meetings. Neither Flagler nor Sessions were accused of committing an act of treason or conspiring with the Russians to compromise the presidential election. All of the evidence collected by the United States Justice Department, the CIA, and the FBI during the presidential campaign did not result in evidence to justify the grant of a FISA warrant or a criminal warrant against Trump or the Trump team. No warrant was issued against Trump or the Trump team while Obama was in office, simply because all of the recorded meetings and contacts between Russian spies and the Trump team never amounted to activities that would substantiate application for and issuance of either a FISA warrant or a criminal warrant. The entire investigative record collected during the entire presidential campaign did not amount to facts that would substantiate probable cause for the grant of a warrant to wiretap either Trump or members of the Trump team. If Trump or any member of his campaign team would have said or did anything amounting to a crime when they met with Russian officials, a warrant would certainly have been issued. Needless to say, the presidential campaign is now over and Donald Trump is now president of the United States of America. However, Democrats continue to claim foul play. To end the prolonged assertions by Democrats that the Trump team colluded with the Russians to fix the presidential election, Trump has made a rather bold and seemingly foolish move by accusing President Obama of wiretapping and demanding his allegation be investigated by the United States Congress. However, Trump's move on the political chessboard was carefully calculated. Trump's demand for a congressional investigation into his nefarious false claim against Barack Obama is wicked and ruthless. Trump desires to make people believe a lie is the truth by any means necessary. His outrageous declaration has forced the United States Congress to disclose to the public any and all of the government's evidence that has been collected during the presidential election campaign concerning accusations that the Trump team colluded with the Russians to compromise the election process. The evidence collected by the government will not be probable or admissible evidence that shows Obama wiretapped Trump. But Trump already knows this. Without doubt, Trump knows if the government had evidence of collusion, a warrant would have been issued during the presidential election campaign while Obama was in the Oval Office. The lack of evidence during the Obama administration cannot now be used to articulate a factual basis needed to establish probable cause relative to the issue raised by Trump's Democratic opponents concerning collusion with Russian spies. Facts and evidence discovered yesterday during the presidential campaign under the Obama administration deemed insufficient to show probable cause for issuance of a warrant are not more probable today. Facts and evidence discovered yesterday during the presidential campaign when Obama was in the Oval Office that were insufficient to obtain a warrant for collusion are insufficient to obtain a warrant for collusion today. Evidence collected by the government under the Obama administration that proved to be insufficient to establish probable cause for collusion is the only evidence available for review today to establish probable cause for collusion. Therefore, This same evidence determined to be insufficient yesterday is insufficient today to establish probable cause of collusion. To find that the evidence collected by the Obama administration is now sufficient to show probable cause of collusion by the Trump team would be a miscarriage of justice and the politicalization of the judicial process. To now say probable cause now exists based on yesterday's evidence would contradict earlier findings based upon review of the same evidence previously determined to be insufficient to substantiate probable cause for grant of a fiscal warrant or a criminal warrant. To now suggest the Trump team colluded with the Russians based upon evidence collected during the election campaign would show Lady Justice is not blind. If Lady Justice in America is blind, no other legal conclusion can be reached. This legal commentary is neither in support of Donald Trump nor the opponents of Trump, but to reveal that the man who now sits in the Oval Office is not stupid. Trump has learned men surrounding him well versed in law and politics. Clearly, Trump is an ingenious businessman perceived by men to be wise, but known by God to be a fool. For what does it benefit a man to gain all the riches of this world and lose his soul?
On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Oh, well," she cried, "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work that night. As soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken and revived. "Take me in, O tender woman, take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried, "but if I hadn't brought you in by now, you might have died." Now she stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed him and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the broken snake. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bitten me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin.
You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.